Hey storyteller, as we get ready to close out this year, many of us start thinking about what we want to accomplish in the new one. Dozens of books and methodologies have been written on goal setting, but writing is a creative process and doesn't always fit into the business-oriented boxes those methods are based on. How then can we apply those principles to our writing and develop effective author goals? Welcome to this week's writer coaching session, where I'll share examples of how we can tailor one well-known method to our needs as creators. Hi, I'm Bridget from B2 Writer Coaching, an author, editor, and your story coach, here to help you make your story powerful, polished, and publishable. First, I have a gift for you just for visiting my channel, my free workshop, 6 Essential Elements of a Powerful Story. One universal goal among writers is to craft a story that has a lasting impact on readers. This 25-minute workshop walks you through how to ramp up your story's plot, characters, conflicts, setting, and theme, plus how to write all this in a way that makes readers feel like they are living the story with the characters. Just click the link in the description or visit b2writercoaching.com/workshop to access it today. That's the letter B, the number 2, writercoaching.com/workshop. And be sure to stick around to the end of this video so you won't miss this week's Power Up, a super practical action step you can use right now in the story you're working on. The goal setting method I'll be using as a basis for today's video is what we call SMART goals. The acronym SMART was, according to most sources, first coined by George Doran in an article he wrote in 1981. The original version of the acronym stood for Specific, Measurable, Attainable, Realistic, and Timely goals. There are, of course, many other goal-setting methods out there, but I'm just using this one as a framework to demonstrate how we can adapt any of these to our needs as creators. However, we're going to look at a slightly revised version of SMART goals. So the first letter in the acronym, the S, stands for specific. This means we need to focus on what we can control and be very intentional about how we word our goals. We should make them task-related instead of results-oriented. For example, when we think of goals, often we think of the big result we want, like we want to write a best-selling novel. We really can't control that, but what are the tasks we can perform in order to reach that desired result? Those tasks should be what make up your goals for the year. What are some marketing efforts you can try in order to help you get to that bestseller status, for example? So again, results are the desire, but tasks are the goals. For instance, as writers, we might set goals for plotting and planning a specific project, or goals for our writing output, like we want to write so many words a day or finish a certain number of chapters in a month. We might also have growth goals or career-oriented goals. So we might want to grow as writers and improve in some area of the writing craft, or we may want to grow our audience or our platform as an author. We also may want to increase the number of authors and industry professionals with whom we network. Those are all fantastic kind of bigger picture goals that we can break down. We'll talk about breaking our goals down into smaller segments in a later section of the video. What do we mean when we say goals should be measurable? This means we can actually tell in numbers or some other measurable quantity whether we've achieved the goal or not. This might be a word count goal, or to write so many minutes a day, or to finish 3 scenes a week, that sort of thing. We can measure the number of words we've written or scenes or chapters we've completed. We can also measure the amount of time we spend writing, the number of Amazon ads we run on our books that are already published, the number of literary agents to whom we've submitted a manuscript. For my writing goals, I have tried word count goals, but that doesn't work as well for me as, let's say, I want to complete 2 or 3 scenes in a week. I function better by concentrating on the scenes that I have completed rather than an arbitrary number of words. I like having a unit or a complete piece done. That seems to motivate me more. When determining how to set these goals, what works best for your process? We're all different. If you are not a plotter, but you're more of a pantser or discovery writer, your goals may be just to write for 2 hours every day. Now, I'm going a little out of order here on our acronym, and we're going to skip ahead to the T for time bound. In the original version, it was called timely, but it means the same thing. The reason I'm skipping ahead is because goals being time bound relate so closely to the specific and measurable components. I've already mentioned time when we were talking about the measurable components. If you want to complete 3 scenes in a week, the week part is the time component. So not only do we want our goals to be measurable and we give them a number or some other kind of measurable quantity related to what we want to do, we also need to do that amount in a set period of time. Maybe you want to finish your novel in a year. Well, that's measurable. You can tell if you've completed the book or not. And a year would be the time constraint that we're going to place on that goal. Most of us will work better with a set deadline. Now, it can be fluid and flexible, but just knowing that's in place can help us to complete work more effectively. There is a principle that the amount of work we will do will stretch to fill the amount of time we allot for it. So if you give yourself a year to finish a book, it'll take you probably the whole year to do it. But if you only give yourself 6 months, you're going to more than likely scramble to complete it within that 6 months. A job may be normally a 2-day job, but if we give ourselves a week, it'll probably fill up that week. That's one reason why making our goals time-bound is so important. This one's fairly easy to think of in terms of writing output. If you want to write 500 words, do you want to write 500 words in an hour, in a morning, in a day? Your process will be quite different depending on which time frame you select. But what if you're submitting to publishers? What kind of time constraints can you give yourself on this? I want to send out 10 query letters to agents, but within what time frame? How many publishers do you want to submit to this year? Once you know that, you can divide that up and give yourself smaller goals and not try to do it all at once. I wouldn't suggest submitting to every agent you're interested in all at the same time, because some may send you a form rejection if they don't choose to represent you, and that doesn't really give you anything specific. But some who may see potential in your work may take the time to give you some advice or a reason for their rejection. Once you have that, you can try to mitigate whatever they mentioned before you submit to more agents or publishers. The letter A in our acronym stands for either achievable or attainable. I like using achievable because it really gives us a framework for how to consider our goals. Are these things realistic? Can we actually do this in the time period we're giving ourselves? I like to add, along with achievable, sustainable. A goal might be achievable, but if it is ongoing, like write 500 words an hour or 3 scenes a week, we want to make sure we can keep that going. We might be able to achieve that goal once, but are we going to suffer from burnout after a while and not be able to keep that pace? For instance, with these YouTube videos, I put out one long video every week. I do release shorts on the other 4 business days of the week, but those are usually clips from the long one. So I made this goal achievable. It's much easier to keep up with releasing 1 video a week as opposed to 3. Making these goals achievable and sustainable can be even more important if you are writing alongside having a full-time job or raising a family or with your other life commitments that take up quite a bit of time. Otherwise, you'll feel overwhelmed and frustrated and quite defeated if you aren't able to keep going. Back to our writing a novel in a year example, if you have a full-time job and you only have time to devote to writing before the kids wake up in the mornings for an hour and then an hour or 2 after the kids go to bed or on your lunch break, then writing a novel in a year might be difficult. Now, that's not to say it isn't possible. There are many prolific authors who do write on this kind of schedule. It depends on your energy level, output, and what you can sustain. These people might be able to write 2,000 words in an hour or 2, whereas for some people, it might take an hour or 2 to write 500. That's totally okay. It just depends on your process. But just keep in mind, can I sustain this goal over time? And the R in the original acronym was realistic, but I think that's a bit redundant because achievable goals would be realistic. That's why we added that sustainable component. I like relevant better. All that means is the goal you're setting, is it really going to help you make progress? Or is it more just busy work? For example, you're interested in trying out a new writing software. Now, don't get me wrong, I am all for technology and putting systems in place that make what we're trying to do better or streamline our process. But if you are in a crunch trying to get a novel written, it's probably not a good idea to try a new software. I'm a huge proponent of using Scrivener, but if Microsoft Word is working for you and you're on a deadline, maybe wait till you finish that novel and then try out that new technology. Examine where you are in the process and what you're trying to achieve to decide whether that goal will help you make true progress toward your big picture goals. This can even relate to writers' conferences. Writers' conferences are fantastic, but sometimes we need to examine whether attending one is really going to help help us progress in our goals that we have right now. For example, if you want to attend a writer's conference to learn and grow in the craft, and they are offering classes or workshops on subjects in which you know you need to improve, or if you want to pitch your book to publishers and some of the publishers or agents you're interested in will be attending that conference, then that conference is a great idea. But if it's workshops or on topics that you've already mastered or you're not really ready to pitch yet, is it really going to help you make progress? There are two broad categories in which we can lump the kinds of goals we may want to set as authors: project or output-oriented goals and career-oriented goals. When we're thinking of project or output-oriented goals, we're thinking about the writing itself, how much writing we want to get done or the specific things we want to write. Now, if you're just starting out, maybe your goal is to actually start working on a writing project that you've had in mind, or to come up with a book idea for a new story, or just to figure out which genre you most prefer writing in. But if you're already working on a project, maybe your goal is to complete or get close to completing a novel or a series within the year. If you're a plotter and you're just starting to plan what will go into your next book, maybe you want to plot Act 1 this week, and then next week you can focus on Act 2, or if that's too fast for you, you can spread it out even longer. Or perhaps you're more of a discovery writer, but you realize that you're having some trouble with a particular character. Maybe your goal is to stop writing for a moment and get a better handle on that character's arc before you continue writing. Or your goal might be just to spend a certain amount of time every day writing, or to get a certain number of words written in a specific time period. If you're editing, your goal might be to edit a certain number of chapters in a specific time period, or to go back through the book and insert imagery that supports a particular theme. Are you finding this helpful so far? If so, consider clicking the like button so YouTube will show this video to more writers like you. You can also subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss future writer coaching sessions. Now let's look at the career-oriented goals we can set as authors. Maybe you're not currently in the writing stage, but you're ready to submit to publishers or self-publish your latest work. Your goals will be quite different from those you would have for completing a project. Or maybe you're in the middle of both. You're ready to publish one book while working on another one. Then you will have a mixture of the two types of goals. First, I think it's important to point out that some writers have a one book goal. Maybe you're a business owner and you're writing a book to support that business. Or maybe you're working on a memoir and this is really the only book you have any intention of writing. Or it could be a self-help book or a how-to book that you're working on. And it's not really that you want to have a career as an author, but you're writing this particular book for a specific purpose. Then your goals will be a bit different. You might not have the same career-oriented goals someone who wants to make a living as a full-time author would have. This section still can apply to you though, because we will talk about goals related to publication. If you do want to be a writer, then it can be important to set goals for improving in the writing craft. In order to make these goals specific, concentrate on the things you can do in order to improve as a writer. You might take an online course, or attend a conference or a workshop, read a book on writing craft, or articles online, or watch Your Story Coach every week on YouTube. You may also join a local writer's critique group to get feedback on your work and find out how you can improve. Be specific with your goals and choose a certain topic in which you want to improve or grow, or a new area you'd like to learn about. Some of my writer friends and students have said that reading books on writing craft can be a bit overwhelming because a lot of them are packed with more information than they need right at that moment. For example, if you're having trouble with using too much passive voice, you might not need to read a chapter on creating an immersive setting. Just read the sections you need right now. Don't think you have to implement everything all at once. These are reference tools that you can always come back to in the future as you need them. If you'd like to make writing a major part of your life, then another goal you may want to set is networking with other authors and industry professionals. Writing can be quite a solitary and lonely pursuit, and really the best way to improve is to interact with other people in our industry. You can do this through attending writers' conferences, local or online writers groups. You can connect with individual people on social media or join author-related groups. Another possibility is to seek out some of your favorite authors and comment on and respond to their social social media posts or videos. Some best-selling authors have instructional material online. You can write reviews of other people's books. This can build connections between authors as well. And whether you're a single book author or want to be a career writer, we all have publishing and marketing goals. One of those goals can involve research. You may need to research literary agents and publishers who accept books in your chosen genre. If you're self-publishing, you may need to research freelance editors, cover designers, illustrators, interior formatters, and writing and marketing practices that are well suited to self-published books. You may also want to enter writing contests, take workshops on the publishing industry as a whole, or take courses. There are courses on self-publishing and on book marketing. You may want to listen to podcasts on publishing or book marketing, plan ad campaigns that you want to enact this year, research and plan giveaways and group book promotions, blog tours, and even sending your book to booktubers, who are people on YouTube who review books, or bookstagrammers who do the same on Instagram. Again, whatever the goals are that you're setting, be specific and stick to things you have control over. I suggest to make a list of big picture goals. These are your more sweeping goals. That would be finishing the novel or self-publishing your book or attempting to get a book deal with publishers. I say attempting because there are no guarantees. You can't control that, but you can have a goal of submitting to a certain number of publishers. And then once we have that list of 1 or 2 or maybe 3 goals for the year, then we can take those and break them down into smaller chunks of things we can accomplish in a quarter, in a month, and then in a week. And then we can set our daily goals more easily. And doing this can help you see your goals in a different way and not feel quite so overwhelmed. For example, if in the first quarter of the year you want to finish writing Act 1 of your story, then you can break that down into tasks for each month and week, depending on how much time you have in your schedule that you can devote to writing. Maybe it's to complete 1 or 2 scenes this week. So then when you sit down to write, you're not looking at needing to write 80,000 words to complete a novel. You're looking at maybe 1,000 words that you need to complete this week to write a scene. So you can focus on that specific task and avoid the overwhelm that is so often an inspiration killer. Whatever your goal is, I suggest creating a simple tracking system so you can keep up with your progress. So if your goal is to write 500 words a day, then you might create a chart where you can list your word count for each day. Or if your goal is to complete your novel, you could create a chapter and scene outline and incorporate checkboxes so you can check each one off or highlight it in a certain color as you complete it. This also works well in the editing phase. If you're a discovery writer and you're in the revision phase of the process, then you could use the chapter and scene outline to highlight or check off each chapter and each scene as you complete the edits for it. This outline can also be fluid, so if you're still in the writing process and you know some of the scenes you have coming up but not others, you can fill in the brief descriptions of each scene as you figure out what you want to write next. This could also just be a sort of a bullet journal where you do a bulleted list of what you accomplished or what you wrote that day. Some writing apps like Scrivener have built-in word count trackers that you can enable. You can set a project goal and then you can see a progress bar that will show you how much is completed, but you can also set daily word count goals. But what if your goal is just to write 30 minutes every day? Then you could use a simple daily planner or create a calendar. For each day, you could jot down how long you wrote, and if you met or exceeded that goal, you could just put a check mark across there, and when you look at your calendar, you can see how many of the squares for that week have check marks. Or you can do something as simple as writing the start and stop times at the top of whatever you wrote, or making a simple chart where you can keep track of it. Why am I advising all this tracking anyway? Well, when we track our progress, it keeps us motivated. We can look back at the calendar or the scene list or the time tracker and see how far we've come and how many days we've kept up that goal. This can keep us going when it gets tough, because writing can get a bit daunting, especially if we're working on book length projects. If you haven't done so already, be sure to grab your link to my free workshop, 6 Essential Elements of a Powerful Story. Remember, just click the link in the description or visit b2writercoaching.com/workshop. For today's Power Up, make a broad list of the goals you want to achieve this year in terms of either specific writing projects or your career as a writer. Then use the suggestions in this video to break them down into smaller, more specific tasks. Let me know in the comments what some of your writing goals are for next year. Meanwhile, since it's every writer's goal to create an impactful story, check out this video and let's power up your storytelling.